The fact of the matter is, I wouldn't get good results for my client without establishing liability. I mean, liability. One.
Yes.
Credibility with the client, but credibility with defense counsel, and therefore credibility with their client, typically the insurance adjuster, goes a long way. They will do everything to identify your weaknesses.
Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. I'm your host, Justin Chopin, business owner, lawyer, dad, world's best husband, traveler, and adventure seeker. On this podcast, we mix business with pleasure. We'll dive into growth strategies, entrepreneurial adventures, the business of law, and prove that business isn't boring. So let's get ready because we are going above the legal limit. Welcome to Above the Legal Limit after 5 p.m. So this is the best part of Above the Legal Limit because it's after 5 p.m., which means we get to drink scotch. So I have here special guest, Phil Lorio. Phil Lorio is my law partner. He's actually already been on the show, but it wasn't an after 5 p.m. And so I'm bringing him back on because I just think there's more information that I want to hear from Phil Lorio. But before we do that, let us not lose sight of why we're here.
Let's definitely not.
All right, so this is why we're here. So today, the drink of choice is Balvenie Caribbean Cask. The Caribbean Cask, aged 14 years, and it's matured in rum casks. In truth, the first time I had this bottle of scotch, I really hated it because I hate rum. I cannot drink rum. It makes me immediately hungover. It makes me have a headache.
I fall into the rhythm of summer, having rum to drink.
I could see you being like a rum, boat drinks in the summer. I just can't do it. And so so I had a bottle of this. I gave it away to a friend, a good friend. So it's expensive, right? So I'm just handing it out on the street. But I gave it away to a friend. I was like, I don't want this shit. Take it. And then I got another bottle of it a couple of years later. And I tried it not long ago. And I thought, Justin, maybe you've been overly critical towards rum casks, scotches and bourbons.
Well, you always have a high bar, Justin.
I have a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
And they're pretty strong opinions.
An expensive taste.
An expensive taste. So here we go. We're going to do Balvenie's rum cask and pour you a few fingers.
Please
pour you
do.
a few fingers for you. Hello.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Oh. Well, anything worth doing.
We'll dive right in then.
Get your shirt wet.
Cheers.
So cheers. All right. Right off the bat, you get the rum. You get that there's that sweetness.
Not a whole lot of bite to it. It's smooth.
Yeah. I remember. I try not to get too pretentious, but
you can't help yourself at times.
Just kind of wanted to get pretentious for a second. Yeah, so it's finished in rum, right? So it's not exclusively aged in rum. So you still get that oak, right? I'm sure this has definitely got that oakiness that you would expect from a Balvenie. Let's see what they say. The Balvenie Distillery has been owned and operated and managed by the same independent family company for 5 generations. I didn't really want to read that part. The 5th rare craft is that of Malt Master. You know what? I actually thought they were going to tell us about this, but
not what you wanted to read.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we got you on the show. We call Phil around here. Hey, thanks for coming. We call him Limits Lorio.
Certainly the nicer thing that they call me
It's one of the things we call him. It's the nicer one. We call him Limits Lorio because I've never seen Phil not come out swinging with a full policy limits demand on a case. But truth be told, every year that you've been here, it's a long time now, it's you seem to get
almost 6 years.
Almost 6 years?
Almost 6 years.
You seem to recover more and more for your clients on a per capita basis.
Well, thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So you're somehow Limits Lorio has figured out a way to make his cases more valuable every year. How do you do it? How do you do it?
I appreciate that. I At the outset, you have to look at a case at all angles. But that doesn't mean. I mean, we had a case recently come in. It was a rear-end 18-wheeler where most attorneys would look at it and be like, "Oh, the whole thing's locked up," and I'm confident that it is. However, there's a church in the vicinity. You got to reach out to those places that could potentially have more information that just what meets the eye. It's not just getting the police report. It's certainly talking to your clients.
That's what I call being more present in your case. So I had this conversation with a lawyer yesterday. Like, you have to be present in what you're doing. Not here, right? Like, you don't have to physically be here. You have to be present in what you're doing. Meaning, have your head wrapped around your docket. Have your head wrapped around your case. There's no checklist. Like, you can't have a checklist for
That's what
practicing law.
everybody wants.
They just want a checklist.
And
people
once
are
you fall
mentally
into that
fatigued.
trap, it's a trap because that'll have you overlook. Listen, your client will tell you too. Your client will say, "Hey, check this out."
Yeah,
check
they
that
know.
out." Yeah, and so you got to
Clients
listen
are savvy.
to them.
They know.
They are very savvy. They say, the truth. They know the truth is out there, and it's your job as the attorney to listen to that and to go find it beyond what even they know. But with that, in talking about the client, it's establishing credibility with the client, but it goes beyond that because I appreciate what the nickname limits Lorio. The fact of the matter is, I wouldn't get good results for my client without establishing liability. I mean, liability. One.
Yes.
Credibility with the client, but credibility with defense counsel, and therefore credibility with their client, typically the insurance adjuster, goes a long way. They will do everything to identify your weaknesses.
When you got a case on the defense,
Yeah.
the first thing you would do, generally speaking, is what? You would write a report to the insurance company.
Absolutely. So everything that you had on paper in that moment, you would, but I know where you're going, so go ahead.
And the report to the insurance company, the first 2 paragraphs of the report are about 2 things. Okay. The plaintiff,
Yep.
if you've deposed the plaintiff, so you'd be like, it's always the same language. This plaintiff presents very well, and I think that they could present well to a jury.
Yep.
She's a nice, retired lady with 3 children and grandchildren, blah, 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 right? So that's the first thing. The first thing is about the plaintiff. The second one, what's the second one?
Credibility before a judge or
The
jury.
lawyer.
Yeah. Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
The second paragraph in your report is,
Oh,
let me
absolutely.
tell you all about
Yeah,
the plaintiff's lawyer.
Absolutely.
We talk about this a lot here. The value of the case is not the same for every lawyer. There are lawyers whose reputation, good or bad, will affect the value of the case. So if you get super schlocky plaintiff's lawyer, never gets his stuff in on time, misses court appearances, right? Just known in the community as just being like a really shitty lawyer. The first paragraph of your report is, well, he's represented by so-and-so. He's got no intention of trying this case. He doesn't have the manpower to do it. He's always going to be late on everything.
But you said, I mean, that expands for that purpose way beyond the piece of paper. It's the judges. But more and more we find ourselves, especially with those opposing attorneys that we have a rapport with, going to mediation. Mediation, I feel like back in the 90s and maybe even early 2000s was a bad word. I feel like you talk to a lot of the more old school attorneys who are very skeptical of going to mediation. I go into mediation thinking, really establishing what I'm not willing to do before I go in,
Right.
and where I draw a hard line.
Yeah, what's your safety word?
A safety word,
Right.
bottom line.
Like, right, so in mediation, like you have to, like, what is the outer limit of what you're willing to do? What's your safety word?
Right.
The
what
only we call is what's our walk away?
Right.
You know, when are we going to stand up and say, nah, I'm not doing this. I'm out of here.
And the only time I get away from that is if the client says, Phil, in mediation, at the end of mediation, when push comes to shove, it's the end all be all. We have their final offer. And if the client disagrees with me, he says, Phil, I hear what you're telling me, and I'd like to take the settlement. That's the only time I break that. You know?
Which we hear all the time.
Which we do.
Which
It
is
happens.
fine. Look, you hired us. It's fine. If you're happy with $150,000 instead of where maybe I'm trying to get $250,000,
Right.
great. I mean, that's
Right.
that's what you want, right? I'm like a barber, right? So if you want a crew cut, I'll give you a crew cut.
Yeah.
If you want, longer hair,
But you have to
Like
know
that-
where you're drawing the line going.
I mean, there are
if you
outer
just
limits.
start folding,
Yeah,
right?
there are limits to some
But I
extent,
think that's
but-
why that older generation feels like, well, if I go to mediation, I'm just going to be pushed into settling for pennies on the dollar, and I don't look at it that way.
Well, and you know what? I found early in my career, those mediations were a lot of just bullshit. You'd show up and you'd be arguing for hours over $5,000. Right. So they're never going to move up at $5,000, and then you're stuck with your number, and no one's having a good experience.
Well,
We
sorry, go
haven't
ahead.
seen that. Lately, I feel like it's been a while since we've seen that behavior in a mediation.
No, and it has been a while. I agree with you, and I think part of that comes back to establishing a reputation and credibility. The reason I came to mediator was because mediators are key in that. When you've established relationships with mediators, it's not relationships. The valuable relationships with mediators are not the ones that are going to tell you everything you want to hear. They're the ones that say, hey, I think you need to consider this in front of your client at times.
But listen, here's what I wanted to say. I said a negative thing about the Caribbean Cast Scotch, and then I said a positive thing about the Caribbean Cast Scotch. But now I'm going to go back to my negative. This isn't my favorite. I don't think it's smooth. I think Phil's a liar. I think that it's very oaky. I don't think it drinks like a 14-year.
We were just talking about establishing credibility.
I know. Well, it's a process. You don't just establish it and then you have it, right? It's an ongoing obligation to continue to establish liability. Credibility. I think I can smell the rum. I don't think it's nearly as smooth. And then when you put this 14-year with that 15-year Dalmore, or even that 12-year sherry cask, Macallan, this just can't hold a candle to either one of those.
Well, should we get red wine involved? Is that the next step?
I don't have any red wine over there. It's all
No.
Scotch
There's
over there.
a whole little fridge in the conference room.
That's where I put the gross red wine that people give us.
Could have fooled
That's an
me.
actual story. That's when people give us really bad red wine, I stick it in the fridge in hopes that somebody will want to drink it.
And I will.
If you ever give me a bottle of red wine and you see it in the office wine
From all
cooler,
those very credible mediators.
I probably
that
owe
we're
you an
talking
apology. You're probably gonna be like, that jerk, that son of a bitch. That was a really nice bottle of wine.
Yeah.
I could do a wine series, but then I feel like it would get really too pretentious. And I'd really try to keep it light and try to keep myself in check. So I keep it to Scotch. But my wife's out of town for 2 weeks, right? And so I'm full Mr. Mom right now. And so when I leave this, I got to haul ass across town. I got to make dinner, right? We're going to grill pork chops tonight.
Nice.
This is real life, right? This is what, and then I got to homework. We got to do the homework. I got to put the kids to bed. So
You got to take care of all those things.
So limits, Lorio.
Okay.
We're talking about establishing liability. There's another element to it. We had a client call us today. They said, "Oh my God, Justin and Jacques, please take me back." So look, there's no science of it. You're not gonna hurt my feelings. Okay. You have your own right to choose your own lawyer. So we had a client, signed her up. 24 hours later, it was like, well, see, my father-in-law, whatever, family, my neighbor's brother's a lawyer. I didn't even know. I want him to handle it. Okay, fine, go. That's no big deal. I got thick skin. You're not gonna hurt my feelings. Call us up. I've made a horrible mistake.
Yeah.
Please take me back. I was, well, what's going on? She needs all this medical treatment.
Yeah.
And this particular lawyer, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why. I have a hunch, but won't, help her out and try to steer her as to how to get the medical treatment. This is on topic, And so the problem is what she's been recommended is pretty significant medical treatment. She's in a lot of pain, but it's clear that the lawyer doesn't know how to navigate the medical portion of her case. And so a lot of what we do a lot of motion practice, we do a lot of research, do a lot of reading and writing, go to court, we mediate, but that's really half of what we do. The other half of what we do is help our clients, because the average consumer, the average person is like, hey, I was just T-boned and I'm in a lot of pain. I don't even know what doctor to go to. Hell, forget all that. We both have bad backs. We've got matchers, or as my 8-year-old says, say we both have bad backs. And I remember when I needed to go to a doctor, I actually had no idea who to go to. Because I know tons of doctors, but I was like, well, I don't know. Don't really want to go to a doctor that, like,
It's always the thought
that I work with. I don't.
It's a question of where you go, but even if it's not, let's say you start at square one and you say, well, let me call the hospital. You know what's going to happen. You're going to be listening to a machine, maybe an operator who's not going to know where to direct you.
And big hospitals don't. That's not where. If you have like a major orthopedic issue, or a neurology issue, or neuroscience, neurospine, big hospital is not necessarily where you want to be.
No.
You need to be at a specialist in their own clinic. So a lot of what we do is kind of steering our client in a path that I think leads them to where they need to be. So I would generally say, like, why don't you call this doctor? I would go to this facility. I'll help you out. Let me make the appointment. And then the other thing is, they're like, well, were you in a car accident? And the client will say, yes, I was in a car accident. And they'll say, well, then we don't accept insurance if you've been in a car accident. Well, now the person's really in a pickle, and that's kind of a lot of times when we'll get involved. But when we talk about limits Lorio, why is he getting limits? I think a good portion of that it bears mentioning of knowing how to navigate the med legal world, and because that really is a significant component of building the case the right way.
Well, aside from compensation, which frankly comes later on. I mean, it does. When you're first involved in an accident, all you care about is getting the best care you can get and being in good hands that you trust. And I get questions often about, well, should I do this? Should I do that? In the medical world, I said, listen to your doctors. That's where people get a little bit confused. But what I'm here to do is I do, receive the doctor's reports so I know the legal implications of what you're being diagnosed with and what recommendations you have. And articulating that from the client's standpoint, for instance, when they're deposed or eventually on the stand, is what shows, along with the medical records and what the doctor is going to say, but how you've actually been impacted. It's not the moment you're hit and the moment you're hurt. It's all of the medical treatment you're undergoing.
And a lot of it's who are you positioning yourself to have the best advocate for you? Because it's not just me. I can't be your only advocate. I'm not a witness. I will not be on the witness stand. I will be asking the questions, but I will not be on the witness stand. So we had a client who says, well, I want Dr. X to be my doctor. And this was Mike, another one of our lawyers here, my partner. He and I were talking to the client. I said, well, look, I know Dr. X. Okay, I know him very well, actually. Socially, I know him very well. That is not going to be your advocate. So if that's who you want, that's fine, but understand that you are really not positioning your case well. She said, no, that's the doctor for me. So I said, okay, great. Well, that's no worries. It's your body, right? You need to do what you need to do for yourself. Dr. X destroyed her in his deposition, because I know that Dr. X is hired by insurance companies all day long and every day, twice on Sunday. And I know who is supporting his family and his income. So I told her, I advised her, I did the best I could. She wouldn't listen to me, so I said, okay, I can work with you. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. And it was really made our lives a lot harder. And so that can happen. The middle road is you go to big box hospital. Big box hospital doctors, they are not anyone's advocate. They're doctors. They went to med school because they like to be doctors. They don't want to be deposed. They don't want to go to court. And so, that's a challenge in and of itself. So if you go to whatever, Sacred Heart, right? We don't have a Sacred Heart here, so I can I don't want to trash talk our only hospital here. Whatever. You go to Ochsner, like the Ochsner docs, they're just doctors. Like they're not advocates. They're not in the legal world. They're in the med world. Right?
But what's
they just want to be
important,
doctors.
if you go to the ER and get the right doctor to put what they should in the report, they do note oftentimes that you were in a motor vehicle accident, but only if the patient tells them.
Only if they're their own
because
advocate.
they're not reading minds, and the doctor needs to know why they're there.
Right. So then you're left with, okay, Justin, fine. You tell me what to do. And so I'll say, okay, great. I love it when clients ask me, Justin, tell me what to do. I will tell you what to do. Here's a list of doctors. Choose one. I have vetted all these guys. I have been to their offices. I've seen their facilities. I've seen the work that they do. I've talked to the patients that they have been with, and I've seen how they testify in court. I have seen how they testify in their deposition. I have seen the results they've given their clients. Same medical care, but they can help you, whereas Dr. X is going to go literally out of his way to throw you under the bus for no reason whatsoever. And by the way, with no backing at all. What he testified to is ridiculous. Middle of the road, you're going to big box, great medical care, great doctors, but you are going to be in a pickle when you need to, get a witness on the witness stand because they just don't want to do it. The
fact of the matter is,
that's a
we've
factor.
seen, and having done this for several years, the doctors that listen to the patients and those that don't, or those that push back on what the patient's trying to tell them.
Right.
And there's a level of comfort that more and more you see with certain medical providers as opposed to others.
What I'm really happy with right now, some of the doctors we work with, and we're getting feedback from our clients a lot. How was it? Because look, I'm not going to recommend someone if you're like, it was awful. I'm like, oh, well, don't do that. All right, well, thank you.
Right.
But we haven't heard that in a long time. But right now, we've got such a great, hundreds of doctors. It's not like one or two, but they're all. I think the groups that we've seen, they're doing great care. Our clients are really happy with them. They trust them, and so all of these. But again, it's trust, right? And so establishing credibility, establishing trust. I think all of this plays into how do you maximize the value of your case. You maximize the value of the case by getting the client/patient with the doctor that is best suited for them.
I literally had one client who had went to see a group that we work with here and there, or that works with our clients, and they were really unhappy, felt unheard or whatnot, and they ended up transferring care to another provider that has also made our clients very happy. But I got glowing reviews on the second one. So sometimes it's just the right match,
right?
Just like it is with somebody coming to an attorney.
Sure, yeah, right. I may not be for everybody.
Yeah, we in the legal world as attorneys, we need to have our own bedside manner. We need to have our own bedside manner.
You can edit that. So, limits, Lorio. I don't know. What do you think of this?
I think it's pretty good, but
I think it's very okay. I stand by it. I liked it the second time. I didn't like it the first time. I knew right away. I can tell you the year. The year
what was the year?
The year I had this scotch, the first time the year was 2020. No, not the year of the scotch.
Oh.
The first time I had this scotch was in the year 2020. And I had it and I was like, what? And I remember why I had it, because I was in Colorado escaping New Orleans August heat. And so I was in this small little convenience store. This was, oddly enough, it was a nice bottle of scotch to have, but it was also the only bottle of scotch to have. I was like, well, that's a weird thing to have on the shelf. So I grabbed it, I tasted it, I thought, I don't like you. I'm gonna have some of you, but I don't like you. So that was 2020. So when we got it this year, it was like 4 years. 4 years, give it a chance. So we tried again 4 years later. I liked it, and I have another show on this scotch. That I guess we'll post or whatever. I don't know.
Well, then you'll have to show me one of the ones you do like on our next episode.
You'll take it. You know, it's growing on. I don't know. All right. So thanks for coming to Above the Legal Limit after 5. Thanks, Limits Lorio, for your, for your wisdom.
Yes, thanks for
Notice,
having me.
he didn't really answer the question. All he said was establishing credibility. I think that's kind of a bullshit answer. I think he's trying to keep, his cards a little close to the vest, but that's fine. That's fine. We didn't really get the answer, but we got some insight. We got some okay scotch. This is expensive shit to not love it. So if you're going to charge that amount of money, then I'm going to be really picky about it, right? So if you were like a $20 bottle of scotch, I'd be like, well, you're fabulous. But if you're going to charge that amount of money, so I don't like to be snobby about these things, but when people start charging crazy amounts of money, then I'm going to turn into whatever, the Gordon Ramsay of scotch. I'm gonna want the best. So
You fit that bill well.
it's the hair. So so good scotch, really great company, mediocre advice. If you have anything you want us to talk about,
Hire me for real advice.
but hire us for it. If you want real advice, you got to pay us for it. Subscribe. Drop it in the comments if there's something you want us to know. If there's something you want to know the answer to, let me know. I have no filter. We will talk about whatever. So until next time, cheers, guys.
Thanks for
stopping
listening.
by.
Thanks for having me, Jay.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me today on Above the Legal Limit. If you enjoyed the show and you want to hear more about business and law, hit that subscribe button. If you didn't like the show, keep it to yourself. Remember, there's no limit to what we can achieve. We will see you next week. Until then, even though we're above the legal limit, let's drive safely. Cheers, everyone.